Hello from my home, friends. I've been fortunate enough to be able to stay safe in place at my house with my family. I do leave the house to do the essentials, and when I do, I wear a face mask, like many people. I wanted to share what I've learned about face mask wearing through my own experience and through researching it on my own. This information is intended for regular people and not for healthcare workers who need a very different level of protection. So here's a little crash course in face masks. There are two key features of any mask. The first is the filter. Now, assuming all airflow moves through the mask, the filter is an evaluation of how well does the material of the mask filter particles. Okay? Now, this is measured using what's called a condensation particle counter. If you're curious about learning more about that, there's some information, a link to some more info. And the smaller the particles that you're trying to filter out, the more it matters what kind of filter or what the material is, and we'll get back to that. The second feature is the fit or the seal. So this is how well does the mask fit around the face. So how well does it prevent airflow around the edges of the mask? Okay? Because around the edges of the mask, there is no filter. So the worse the fit, meaning the bigger the gaps, the more it's like wearing no mask at all. So the fit and the seal really matters quite a bit. So let's take a closer look for a minute at particle size versus filtering capacity. So here we have a great image that looks at different sized particles in comparison. So obviously all of these particles are not visible to the naked eye, but you can have a sense of how they compare because they're right next to each other. So if we look first at the red blood cell, so a red blood cell is 7 micrometers in diameter, and you can see it's right sort of in the center of this whole spread. The two black particles, one labeled PM2.5 versus PM10, this stands for particle matter 2.5 micrometers or particle matter 10 micrometers. And it's a standardized particle size that's used in mask filter testing. And those two sizes mimic common air pollutants. Okay? So we can compare everything to these two standard things. Now, down here at the smaller end of the spectrum, we see a bacteria, and we also see a virus, specifically the coronavirus. So the bacteria and viruses, these are germs that make us sick. Now, you can see that the coronavirus, much, much smaller than a bacteria, it has a size of about 0.1 micrometers. And the range for this is 0.0 to 0.14 micrometers. So the coronavirus is a really, really tiny particle. Now, if we look to the left of the coronavirus, we see an even smaller particle. It's the 0.007 micrometer particle. And this is a standardized size. This size particle is used to measure the efficacy of our best performing masks that any commercial company produces. So ideally, a mask that somebody is wearing that can filter out this tiniest particle is adequate enough to filter out the coronavirus and protect them from the coronavirus. Now, there was a study back in 2009 that actually tested a variety of face masks in comparison to their particle blocking ability. And they used this standard tiny particle size, this 0.007 micrometers. Now, the purpose of this study was actually to evaluate face masks for protection against air pollution. But it's very, very helpful in terms of understanding why we're using face masks today for protecting against coronavirus. So we can see that using nothing protects us against nothing. So using absolutely no face mask filters out 0 of these particles. Now, a simple cotton handkerchief or cotton bandana only was able to filter out about 28% of these particles. So that leaves quite a lot of the particles coming through. If we look at a surgical mask, and this was actually quite surprising, but a surgical mask filtered out 80%. Okay? So surgical masks, and I've seen in other studies that surgical masks range between 60 to 80% filtration. Now, remember, however, that there's 2 aspects of a mask: the filtering ability and the seal. So all of these numbers are assuming a perfect seal, okay? So surgical masks, assuming a perfect seal, no leakage, you get 80%. They also tested a variety of cycling masks. So these are masks that people wear when they're riding a bicycle to protect against wind or specifically to protect against air pollution. Very popular in China and other countries where there's a high level of air pollution, and that's a chronic concern for people. And so they did reasonably well depending on the type of cycling mask. Now, Teflon filter, this is a commercial grade filter that can be put inside of a mask, and you can see it did quite well, okay? And then the rest, the 3M8812, the dust respirator A, dust respirator B, these 3 are very similar to what we've come to understand to be this N95 commercial mask, which is kind of the holy grail of these face masks. Now, N95 actually means, by definition, that it filters at least 95% of these tiny particles. And if you can hear my kids in the background, you know that this has now become the norm of doing anything at home in this global pandemic. So I apologize for the noise. So basically what we understand is that these cotton masks, these masks that are used with using fabric, they in and of themselves, by themselves, don't have a great filtering capacity. But that's not terrible news, and I'll tell you why in a minute. But the reason for that is that these are woven fabrics. And any woven material are going to have gaps, and these gaps are going to be big enough to allow these tiny particles through, including coronavirus particles. Now, in a very interesting study in 2006, they tested what they called a simple respiratory mask using homemade products to fight actually an Ebola outbreak at the time in low resource areas. And in this study, and you can look it up if you'd like, there's links here, they used a cotton mask that used a Hanes undershirt, right? So simple Hanes cotton material. And they actually used 9 layers of this Hanes cotton material. And what they found was that this 9 layers of cotton, tight woven cotton, only gave them a 67% filtration from these tiny particles, which 67% is actually pretty good, but that's with 9 layers of a very tightly woven cotton. So that's something to keep in mind. Okay, so what can we do? All right, what can we do? Now, number 1, and I'm going to beg you to do this. If you own an N95 mask, please consider donating it to your local hospital. Our frontline healthcare workers are constantly exposed, and not just in theory, but they are working in close quarters. And there is a desperate need for your N95 mask to protect our heroes, our frontline healthcare workers. And that N95 mask for your purposes is really overkill. Okay? It is not, you don't need it as much as these healthcare workers do. But what I do recommend is buy or make a homemade mask. And then you can do simple things to boost its ability to protect you. Okay? So any mask, it doesn't matter. Take a mask that you've already made or you already have and do the following things. First, I want you to add a disposable filter to your mask. Okay? And so you can use a paper towel, fold it over 2 or 3 times. You can use 1 or 2 coffee filters or any other non-woven material. And you want to put it on the inside of your mask. Put it between the cloth of the mask and your nose and mouth. Okay? And leave it there for the entire time that you're doing whatever you're doing. And then throw it out and use a new one. Okay? And of course, wash your mask thoroughly in between uses. So that's one, is add a disposable filter. Make sure that it is a non-woven material. And multiple layers are even better. Number 2, seal the edges of your mask. Seal it around your face, and you can use very simple bandage tape to do this, okay? The kind of stuff there where you get a cut and you put gauze and you're bandaging, putting tape around it to stick to your body. Use that bandage tape and just seal the edges of your mouth, of the mask around your face. And just remember to remove and replace this tape each time you go out in public. Okay? And then finally, last note, please, beards, facial hair will prevent a good seal. Okay? So please consider shaving your beard if you're a male and have a beard. Please consider shaving your beard. You can regrow it after this pandemic, but it really will make getting a good seal virtually impossible. I hope this was helpful. Please stay safe, stay healthy, stay inside.